All right. Hello, folks who are just starting to join us. Thank you for coming to the Evolve monthly customer webinar. This session is for our users to get a chance to work directly with the customer success and product team. We demonstrate features, we go over some common questions that we hear a lot, and of course, we take your live questions. So please use the Q&A function in your toolbar to submit questions throughout the webinar. If we don't get to them during our session today, we'll make sure we have someone reach out to you. And here is a quick look at our dedicated team who's going to be on the call today. And I am going to hand things over to Alex Siebert, who's going to get us started with some housekeeping news for our Evolve users.
Thanks, Marina. Hello, everyone. Just kind of wanted to take a little bit of time at the beginning of the webinar here to talk about our new LMS that we're rolling out. It's relatively new. We're uploading content every day. Our LMS is basically an online training platform that you can go through courses that we've put together, so that way you can kind of go through some videos and learn about the tools a little bit more in depth than some of our YouTube content. If you want to sign up for our LMS, I would love to help you guys out. I'm actually going to put my my email here in the chat. Please reach out to me. Just let me know that you want to sign up, and then I will help get you guys going. If you have any questions about the LMS or anything along those lines, please also feel free to reach out to me. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
Thank you, Alex. All right, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about ITM hangers and how points are handled with those hangers. Let's see here. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, awesome. So everybody should be able to see this. So I've got a model here with some hangers in it. And so a common question that we'll get is, how do I tag the points on ITM hangers? ITM hangers in Evolve, or really in Revit, because they're not families, we can't nest a point family in those hangers. So what we're doing for a hanger to handle points is we're calculating a point. So anytime you open the point manager and you see your ITM hangers in there, they'll be grayed out, and you'll see a pending action that says computed. This is because we're calculating the attachment points for that hanger. So what's really nice is points are kind of handled automatically, but some confusion crops up around the handling of the point number. So whenever you look in your project and you've got your ITM hangers, you may notice that they just have a -H- number. That is because we are adding that number to ensure that every point has a unique number. But people will ask, how do I tag this number? And you can't. It's not a parameter that you can tag. So how do you tag that number? So let's look at how we handle that. So what you're actually not seeing of what is happening is, if we give a hanger an item number, we are going to prefix the number, the point number, with that number. So if I change this to say HG, say L1-1, or maybe even we can make that an underscore, just so it stands out for us. Now, if we go into our point manager, we'll see that the number here has changed. So what we're doing is we're taking the item number of the ITM hangers and we are prefixing that, and then we're adding a -H-1. If the hanger has two attachment points, say a trapeze or a half strap, that type of thing, then you'll have one that's -H-1, and then the other point will be -H-2. So in the case of hangers with only one point, all you'll need to do is just tag the item number. So you can always tag using number or using the renumber tool to get that tag for you. So this is the number that you would tag on your drawing. And then in your point file, whenever the points are being laid out to make that connection, they'll be looking at the number of the point. So the -h-1 here is really just to ensure uniqueness. That can essentially be ignored by the person laying out the points. The way that they're making the connection between the points and the tags on the drawing is this prefix here. So in this way, I can identify which point corresponds to which hanger where the embed will go. So that's really it. That's kind of what I wanted to explain, to understand that connection between the item number and the point numbers with ITM hangers. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Adam.
Great, thanks, Jason. Okay, so there's a few things that I wanted to go over today. Let me share my screen here. First thing is there is a known bug in the 7.0 release where certain models will get an error when creating a view. Typically it's happening with spooling. Let me pull it over here. This object reference not set to an instance of an object error. We do have a fix for this coming in the next release, but the correction, if you ever encounter that, is to check your default 3D view and make sure that assemblies are visible. So easiest way to do that is just going to click on the home button, default 3D view. This is not a work sharing model, so it just says 3D, but might say your username. And what you want to check here is that your spools or assemblies are not cropped out. If you try to clear it out, like one thing to check is work sets. Make sure that work sets are turned on. If you're still having issues, you can easily just delete the view and then regenerate it. So if I went back to here, I could delete the view. And then when I click the default view again, it'll generate kind of a brand new view with everything unhidden. So doing that with the creation of the view will correct that error, and then you'll be able to process through. In the next update, this will be corrected. So I wanted to bring that up. The other thing I wanted to address is we made a couple of updates on the downloads page, and I think I've covered this before, where we can find the archives for all previous installers, along with their corresponding release notes. Also, we've added a link to these upgrade instructions, which contain any notices that you need to know with the update. If a feature was enhanced, sometimes the config files change, which change the default values. Those types of things will be noted here. The important one for 7.0 is dealing with your mechanical properties with the shared parameter file. So on the last call, I breezed over this and I mistook one of the enhancements. And so I want to explain what this is. So when you go into your manage mechanical properties setting, you will see there's a new section. What this does is allows you to create, kind of dynamically create your ancillaries in your mechanical properties. The top portion here allows you to generate what the description string value is going to be. And then the lookup portion here deals with the description of the item. So let me give you an example of this. Let me go to a 3D view here. All right, so click on something over here and I'll bring in up my mechanical properties. So you'll see now I'm getting an ancillary section, and the description that's coming in here is that concatenation of fields up here. So these are just the default values that are coming in, and that's what gets displayed. Now, what you have an option for is to add a description to this. The description is going to require a lookup table because Revit does not give you access to that property value for the ITM. So if I snoop this element, whoops, and I look at my ancillary parts, this is what I have access to. So they give us the product code, but not the description of the item to actually understand what this is. So we did create a workflow to capture that ancillary description. What it requires is a data table. So in this sample file, we'll have an example of this, but there'll be a data table called fabrication ancillaries. If I edit this, it's going to be a really basic table where I have a product ID code and the corresponding description. This is unfortunately all manually created because there's no way to extract it out of the database, but if you have a way to do it, if you can get the code and the corresponding description, what that allows you to do is configure that in your properties. Let me go back here and let me just change this out to description. And this section below here allows you to map this out. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm picking a data table. So there's my fabrication ancillaries. I'm identifying the product code field. So which column in the data table contains my product code. So I called it product ID here. You'll see it's just displaying whatever columns are in the data table. My description is my description field. And then this is just some validation text that can be displayed if the mapping doesn't exist or if there's a invalid configuration. But if we go back to the data table, just to pull this up. So just product ID, description, description. We're just making that connection here to this table. So what that looks like is, oh, there. You'll see instead of getting just a product code, I can actually return my description of that item. Now, this is one implementation of it is within the mechanical properties. So I can layer it in here. But really what this is pulling from this list of parameters is pulling from the same list that is found within data profiles. So if I open up my data profile, you'll see there's a new column here for special ITM values. You also get a couple of other things like element ID, but this allows you to capture these property values that are in Revit, but capture them as a usable field. So another way you can use this is by adding it to a data table. So I'll create a simple data table for those who aren't familiar, and we'll kind of see what this can do. So first thing I want to do is just give this a name, and we'll do this. We'll call this part lookup. The main thing to consider about what a data table is think of it as a method to create a container of elements. It's all driven by an element filter and then really your scope. So your element filter will be, what are the parts you want? So if I get hangers, pipework, ductwork here, again, the element filter is probably the most important utility to learn how to utilize and evolve. We use it everywhere. So I know on the SkyPrep website, the Evolve University site, we have some training videos on element filter, but definitely spend some time on how to use this. And I'm going to come back to this in a second on some of the things you can look at in 7.0 with element filters. But anyway, I'll make this real simple and just select my categories. And then my selection scope is going to be just that, like what within this project, do I want to limit the container to? I can do the entire project by view, by selection. Prompt on execution means I get to choose these when I run it. So I'll just do entire project now. So once you've created the data profile here, the bottom section is where you define what parameters you want to display. So I'm going to pick a name and we're going to call this ancillary description. And all I'm going to do is return my ancillary description. And what I'll also do is I'll do something simple like family. Oops. And I'll use a parameter for family name type. Here, I'll just add one more just to show the the project info. So project name, and I could say project name. So how I'm going to use this, I think one of the easiest tools to first utilize a data profile is the find elements tool here. So when you open this window up, what you'll want to do first is hit the refresh button. This will just refresh all your data profiles. So here's my part lookup. So once I select my profile, I can hit refresh and I can see all the different ancillaries that I'm returning. So you'll see I'm just getting where they're coming from the family. My project name probably didn't come in because the project file probably just doesn't have a project name in it. But let's change it up a little bit. So I'll go back to my data profile. What we can do is, let's get rid of this. Oops. And we'll look for, I guess, hopefully this proves the point. But I can basically, I don't think I need to go into much more detail, but I can basically select any parameter I want to add to this. So a good example here are some of the profiles that we have already made. So for example, if I take this pipe bomb and refresh it, this will be a better use case here. You'll see I get a whole bunch of columns here. Again, just going back to the profile, go to my pipe bomb. All of these columns that are displaying are set up over here. So my product description, size description, so on and so on, are just all of these columns and the corresponding parameters that we're using. So it's just another area where you can utilize capturing ancillaries. The third area, in which I mentioned last week, is in reports. So if I fire up a report here and I go to my ITM hangers, for example, I believe this will have an option to display ancillaries. And I can hit yes and submit. And now I'll have a summary of my ancillaries. And you'll see some of these are not found, excuse me, are not found within the lookup table, which is why they're returning just the product code and not the description. So definitely one of the more technical utilities in Evolve, but a real valuable one to be able to generate, more complete report with ancillary data. All right. So the other thing I wanted to do is talk about the 7.2 update. That should be out shortly. I would suspect within a few weeks. That's got mainly just some bug fixes, minor enhancements throughout the features. I have the 7.2 installed right now. One of the quick utilities is a select run function where you can select an item and it selects the run quickly, and you can do multiple Minor little quick tool, but nice useful one. Another feature that's coming out is a part encoder. I'm not going to get into, well, actually, it'd probably be good to look at this a little bit. So a part encoder allows you to create a hash to an element. So where you're going to notice this is with the trapeze hangers, for example. So the trapeze family hangers that Evolve creates, there is a parameter that's within the hanger called Evolve Configuration ID. This parameter previously in 7.0 and before is automatically calculated by Evolve. It's a hash that's generated based on the configuration of the hanger itself. So that was hard coded, and based on the various rod lengths and strut lengths, it would generate a unique code. And then if there was another similar or exact match, it would generate the same code. So we basically use that method to identify uniqueness of a family, and specifically complex families. So we've created a generic utility now that allows you to do this as well. So it would work for any family. Typically, probably families with like length variables are good ones because there's just so many options. It's really hard to identify uh, all the different length variables. But what this utility will allow you to do is, once again, use a data profile which defines the criteria. We'll look at an example here in a second, but I'll probably cover more of this on another update once 7.2 is released. But just because it uses a data profile, again, it's more reason to start understanding how that utility works and take advantage of it, because it's going to be a really powerful layer to some of these tools. All right, so another thing on the 7.2 update, one of our focuses was to provide easier ways to get up and running, especially for new customers, or even anybody who's not familiar with certain features. You may be only using spooling, and you're not familiar with sleeves or supports, or so on. So one of the things we did with the 7.2 update is we provided a batch file that it contains a bunch of default configurations, as well as we preload project level configurations if they're not present. So what that looks like now is when you start a new project with 7.2, and I'll just use the mechanical template to start, but well, here, I'll use just a generic architectural template because it doesn't matter what you use. So I start a new project here, and what you'll notice, and this will be again with 7.2, is that when you go into the various project level configs, there will be settings already made. All of these are going to be really generic in nature. So the intent is that you could basically use them out of the box. They will work. They most likely won't give you the exact result you want, but it'll be easier to come into something that's already configured and to modify that to dial in exactly what the results are that you want. So you'll see this with any project level setting. A good way to identify what the project level settings are is if you're within the workstation settings within Evolve, you can export all your configurations for both project and user in one shot. So when I click this button and I find a folder here, we'll just throw it into that EM folder. And once I open that up, so what it'll do is it'll generate a folder that's timestamped, and all your project configurations will be in there, as well as user configs. So to that point, when you look at the installer with 7.2, you'll see there's a bunch of default project configurations. So those are what's loading into these projects. So again, the intent here is you've never used family hangers. When you open this up, you'll get a couple of profiles or settings pre-configured for you. Now, that's pertaining to project level configs. You also have other types of configs that this doesn't apply for, which basically is anything that the configuration exchange can utilize. So another layer to this is if you want to use tools like data profiles, for example, parameter sync, or colorizer, what you can do now is when at any time, whether this is a new project or an existing project, you can go to configuration exchange, and when you select import, inside of the install file, there'll be a batch file. Once you hit open on that, what you'll see, let me just collapse this. What you'll see are all the different configs that you can import from the install file. So again, the idea would be if maybe you've never used parameter sync or you want to see some of the examples we have, you could select just parameter sync. You could certainly select everything and bring it into your project. I'll take everything just for the sake of doing it. So once I've selected what I want, I can select import selected and go ahead and do that. And now when I open one of those tools, those rules will be in there. Note that the rules will come in disabled. So even though that these rules can be set automatically, you would have to come in here and enable them and automate them. We wouldn't want to automate these rules without knowing what they actually do. If you decide to create your own batch file by exporting out, custom sync rules or any rules, you can do that as well. And if these are set to automatic and enabled, that's how they come in. So it's however you send them out is the same way they come in. So those are the kind of two kind of configuration related items that you can expect in 7.2. A couple of other things that are worth noting, you'll see that my grid state here has some conditional formatting. The column order may look different than what you're used to. We did update all the default grid states, but you have to make sure you reset those on your end. So the easiest way to do that is if you navigate to the app data folder to evolve mechanical, you'll see here some of your user settings right here. So these three settings, if you just delete those out, what that'll do is it'll delete all of your user-based settings like element filter and grid states. Now, you may never have used a grid state before. However, if you've ever moved a column or something like that, if you've ever touched a grid, Evolve will create a default grid state for you, and so that we save what that is. So again, by deleting it, what it'll do is it will restore everything. The other thing you can do is within the grid states, you could always say restore as well. And in this case, it restored it to something I had already set. So if I think I can do this in session. Let's see. Oops. Well, and let me open this back up. Parameter sync. Nope, that did not do it. Let me just try to do that one more time. Nope, I don't know what I did here. I think I have to restart Revit. But anyway, so the grid states are one thing that we also put in there. The other thing, along with the grid states, is the element filter. So let me just open up a project here. So your selection filters, you will see that if you do not have any selection filters, you'll get a whole bunch of them now. We did not separate electrical and mechanical. We basically, this is just one giant list of 40 element filters. We did group these and subgroup them for some organization. So what we wanted to do is create a series of element filters that, an everyday user could take advantage of. The different categories were boiled down to like Revit, meaning these are just some generic Revit element filters that you could use. For example, you'll see when I came into this view, I had to hide my links so I could restore those. Well, I didn't have them turned off. What I can do with an element filter is I could hide links and show links just quickly with an element filter. I can hide scope boxes, and I'm just double clicking on these. Obviously, we can also hotkey these things. But uh, yeah, these are just a lot of just generic everyday items that we came up with. Um, the mechanical grouping is going to be obviously everything specific to mechanical. Mostly these are all just ITM service related type filters. And then electrical has a few around conduit and clearances. Now the core features are taking advantage of various universal evolve features, for example, points, um, electrical points, mechanical points, same thing. So we can utilize the same filters for those. Um, so the core ones will apply to both products. Electrical is just for electrical and mechanical is for mechanical. Um, but these are definitely worth looking into and using these as good starting points to take advantage of element filter. All right, I think that is everything I wanted to cover. Um, one thing worth mentioning with 7.2 as well is the project template file for mechanical was updated. Um, so there's a couple of extra files here. Um, the project file, like I just mentioned, also the some family template files. If you build families, these just have some evolve parameters preloaded basically. Um, oh, and within the families folder, you'll notice the title blocks are not here like they were previously. We previously had all the different sizes and setup. One of the issues with those title blocks and the way they were set up is they already had view templates and things layered in because that's how you configure the Evolve title blocks. But they never really would work for any project unless you happen to have those exact view templates or started with our template. So the template file that's here will contain title blocks. So if I create a new project here with the mechanical template, you'll notice there will be sized title blocks here, but they make sense in a template because within this template, all these view templates that I've defined within my title block here have to reside in that project. Um, so title blocks make sense to be in your project template. That's how they normally would be. So it was the reason they were removed from the installer like they were and only put in the template is just to avoid confusion. When you do open the title block that we ship with, you'll see this just a non-configured title block. It's set up where it could be sized. You could certainly use it to be parametric in size, things like that. Um, but just kind of cleaning up some of the default files. But yeah, so now I think I'm actually done. So I'll leave it there. And if there are any questions, please go ahead and submit those and we can try to answer them.
And we had Casey submit a great question, and I'll just go over this really quickly. And please, for the rest of our audience, we'd love to use the rest of our time today to answer any of the questions you might have. So Casey asked us, what does LMS stand for? And that's a great question. So we have recently put together Evolve University, and that is basically a learning platform. So once you get access to it, we try to share tons of feature demos and have opportunities such as this webinar that are, included and, for all Evolve customers. The Evolve University is kind of like an upgraded learning platform that really deep dives into more specifics and just has hundreds of hours of videos for your team to utilize. And I will go ahead and share Alex's email in the chat here. He is going to be the best person to reach out to about Evolve University. I'll also take this time to give a little shout out to MEP Force. We are not going to be doing our usual conference this year, but we do have the MEP Force Roadshow. So we'll be coming to major cities across the US over the next 6 months, and we're bringing the conference right to you. We know that right now is a tough time for all organizations, and so we want to make, we don't want you guys spending money on flights and hotels. We're going to bring the party right to your backyard. So definitely make sure you're keeping an eye out for MEP Force updates. And you can always get the latest info at evolvemep.com. All right. Well, I guess we don't have any questions coming in today. With that, I will just say thank you, everyone, for coming, and I hope that you found the information valuable. Make sure to follow us on social media to keep up with all of our upcoming webinars, events. Fantastic. We did get one question come in here. Sorry. It says, are you going to be at AU, at Autodesk University is what I think. AU is what they're asking. And we will, I'm not sure if we'll have a booth, but we'll definitely have a team at Autodesk University. Yep. Thanks for asking, Gabe. Fantastic. Well, I hope that you guys have all found the webinar valuable. Make sure to keep up with us on socials, and we are going to be emailing this recording out to all of our registrants. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your day.